And our final piece of the bracket of the entire tournament, it's the Arnold bracket. Our number one seed was the Omaha Beach sequence in Saving Private Ryan, which is, if you haven't seen that, holy shit. It's incredible.
I think most people have.
It's the visceral nature of Omaha Beach come to life. And that is going to play the play-in winner of John Wick 4, which is the Sakura Core stairway fight sequence in which he has to make it to the top of the hill in time, versus Jackie Chan's police story mall fight. So I think that's a really interesting one because we have something clearly influenced by Asian cinema versus one of the icons of Asian action cinema as our play-in. We then go to the test sequence in Top Gun Maverick taking on the church fight in The Kingsman. Or Kingsman. I should just say Kingsman the Secret Service because I believe The Kingsman is a movie by itself. So I have to.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I fixed it in the graphic that you guys are seeing, but my notes that I have basics, I did not fix that one yet. So apologies on that one. We then go to the biggest comedic entry in this, which was the Anchorman News Team fight from Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, taking on the Manson Massacre scene at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or the break-in of the Manson family. Once Upon a Time. That's a really interesting matchup to me, because it's just so weird.
Mm-hmm.
We then go to Mission Impossible 6, which is Fallout, and that's the helicopter scene in which they all have to, get into the helicopter, all that kind of stuff, versus the car chase in Bullet. Another one that I am excited to watch because that's one of the few I haven't seen. Then we go to The Fugitive, which is, the way you describe this is hilarious to me, which I haven't seen. I haven't even seen this scene yet, so it's another one I haven't seen. But how do you describe this scene in The Fugitive?
I think I described it as the bus/train sequence.
And I was like, what does that even mean? And you're like, just watch it, you'll understand.
It'll make sense when you see it. Yeah.
And that is taking on Mad Max Fury Road. And the section we chose for Mad Max Fury Road it's part of the chase away from the Citadel, in which Max and Furiosa are teaming up together and they're working together. They're passing weapons back and forth, and you have all the jumps over the tanker sequence, which is really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I now have to rewatch that movie to make sure I segmented it properly, but
I think so.
I'm not going to be mad about having to rewatch Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
It only goes up every time I watch it, in estimation. Then we have the No Man's Land sequence where Wonder Woman is coming out of the trench in 2017's Wonder Woman, taking on a scene from Collateral in which another one, you're like, alley shootout sequence, like the way you describe it, you're like, it's pretty, it's there, it's whatever.
Well, that's definitely the movie that I have. That's the longest one. Like, I saw it the longest time ago.
Yeah.
So I really need to rewatch that because I barely remember it.
Here's the thing: it made enough of an impression that you're like, I think it deserves to be there. But you're also like,
I do remember, I remember it being really, really good. So, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. So I'm actually really excited to rewatch it because I think if it's as good as I remember it, it actually has the possibility to be on my top 100.
Wow.
Possibly.
Okay.
Because it has Jamie Foxx and it has Tom Cruise as a villain, which is always fun.
Yeah, Tom Cruise doesn't play villain very often, and it's interesting way it is to play it. Then we go to Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, and we're going with the Ride of the Rohirrim. Again, when we were doing research, people were saying the Siege of Gondor. I'm like, that's 2/3 of the movie. You can't count 2/3 of the movie. So we're going the sequence of the Ride of the Rohirrim going through and taking on the forces of Mordor. And that scene to us pretty much ends with the fall of Theoden and the
Nazgul,
the Oliphant come in, and the Witch King kind of takes out Theoden. Then that's taking on the ship destruction in Titanic, which another one I was a little skeptical of. I went and rewatched it. I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty impressive. And it's when the ship splits in two, and that's a pretty interesting scene. And then our final matchup in the tournament, in terms of the round of 64, is John Wick 2's Catacomb Escape sequence fight, taking on the Quicksilver scene from X-Men Days of Future Past, in which they're trying to get Magneto out of prison. And is it the Pentagon that he's buried under?
I believe so, yeah.
And Quicksilver saves them all from a shootout, which is really, really interesting, to say the least. Which one are you most excited for in this bracket? Or which one do you think is really...
I think there's 3 that I actually really am excited for. One is Anchorman versus Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm intrigued.
Because both are actually comedic scenes. It'll make sense when you see it.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 6 versus Bullet. Both are actually chase scenes.
Yeah.
And then there's one I'm gutted by, which is Return of the King and Titanic.
I thought it was so interesting for that one to
because
pop up.
Titanic is the one scene where like you don't actually think of it as an action scene, so it's like the really unconventional choice in this bracket.
Yes.
So like that's the one I'm like, oh, why does that have to be going up against like the Juggernaut, like one of the biggest action scenes of all time.
Well, the other thing is, I started that one immediately because it's the 2 Oscar juggernauts of a time period. Where they just swept through everything Oscars wise.
Yeah,
that they
both won 11 Oscars.
And they're, in terms of, if you believe the Oscars are a measure of greatness of movies, they are 2 of the movies that exist that have a legitimate claim to saying greatest or best movie ever per the Oscars. So to get them in a matchup again. That's something, if I were manipulating this like professional wrestling, I would have put them on opposite ends of a bracket to make it into like the final 4. Where it would have been like, oh, that's going to be a really interesting Elite 8 matchup to see who's going to get out of this bracket, or this piece of the bracket. The other one I'm completely gutted by, because this is one that I argued for number 1 status, and of course it moved down to what I would consider kind of a number 2 seed. Top Gun Maverick going up against Kingsman is interesting. It's more Top Gun Maverick having to go up against most likely Saving Private Ryan. We don't know that for sure yet based on our arguments.
Yeah, that's true.
But a number 1 seed immediately meeting Top Gun Maverick is not what I had in mind for this fucking tournament.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the one where I'm just like, son of a bitch. Like, that hurts. So that is our bracket. It's going to be really interesting to see all these matchups play out in a way that is so interesting and unique. But that is our entire bracket. Are we ready to start the festivities and head into our play-in games?